I'm the Doctor.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey, the constellation of Exterminating. I see rise.
Time and relative dimension in space.
It means life.
Greetings, humans, Daleks, Time Lords, and Pig Slaves. You are listening to Exterminating Doctor Who.
This is the show on Utter Radio where we take unpopular episodes of Doctor Who and debate whether they're really all that bad.
With your hosts, Aidan Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And in today's episode, we are talking about Daleks in Manhattan / Evolution of the Daleks.
Yes, we watched both of them.
Yes.
Back to back.
Yes. This morning. We've really progressed from the night before to just 10 minutes before.
I remember when I just remember the first episode we ever did, the little pilot, which we did kind of air later on, but that was the first one we did. I just didn't watch the episode.
Didn't you? You just make it up as you go along.
Fear
No,
Her,
I
do you remember? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch Fear Her. I also didn't watch Victory of the Daleks. I also didn't watch Love and Monsters.
Oh, wow.
I also didn't watch The End of
Okay.
Time.
You're a fraud. It's a scam.
But
How?
besides that, I have watched them all.
Oh, I see.
Because some of them I just think, I know this episode. I don't know, whatever.
Let's just look at all our episodes and see which ones have been the worst. The worst ones
It'll
were
be
the
the
ones
ones
we didn't
where I've
watch.
not actually watched the episode before. But this one I did, even though, to be honest, I probably couldn't. I probably could
I
have
probably
got away.
didn't need to. Yeah, I know.
I probably could have got away with not watching this one, but considering some other things was actually quite useful. Because we wouldn't have got the "put your hands up, you schmucks" line if we
Let's
hadn't,
find that.
watched.
Which I can't replicate it, but you saved it in the chat, so let's find it.
Well, it really made me laugh because I was watching.
Hands in the air, you schmucks! Hands in the air. It's so.
That's,
Yeah. One point about this episode: the accents are okay. They're good. Sometimes they're too much.
Yeah, no, I think I'm actually gonna preface this now by saying I thoroughly enjoyed watching this today because I expected it to be so bad. Because a lot of the time, I have what do you call it when you think of something fondly, but it's actually what's it called? There's a phrase for it, isn't there?
What? Nostalgia filter. What's this?
Rose tinted glasses. That's it.
The one.
I look at it through rose tinted glasses and I think, I remember that episode because I remember I used to love it as a child. Then sometimes I come back to them older and I go, yeah. So I was fully expecting that to happen with this episode, and it didn't. But I do want to preface this podcast by saying to everybody listening, all three of you, I like this episode. I said it.
Also enjoyed these two episodes. I did. I remember watching it because I remember watching it last year, like with everything else in David Tennant's series, and it was definitely a bit of a slower burner compared to the ones around it, but the one that follows it was, I think, worse.
Abysmal.
Yeah. So maybe we're enjoying this one more because we've come from watching like 8 terrible episodes in a row.
Maybe we're just dealing with it on its own, and that works fine rather than in the context of the full series.
I think that's it as well. Yeah. Because if you watch this after, I can't remember which comes before. I think it does slow everything down a wee bit, but then it is. But no matter what, these two episodes are better than the one that follows it.
Yeah,
because
and
that is terrible. The Lazarus Experiment is not a good one.
No, and I do think because when I watched this as a child, and me and my brothers just used to watch Doctor Who over and over and over and over and over again.
As you do.
You wouldn't watch them. Would very rarely watch episodes in order. Do you mean you wouldn't ever do a series?
I've only ever done it once, but that was when I got the box set for Christmas and I just stuck them in and I was like, hey, Doctor Who.
So
then I'd just come back to the ones I like.
If me and my brother were like going, let's watch Doctor Who, what should we fancy? Do you want that human Dalek one? Yeah, let's watch that. You just watch it like that. And I think this episode benefits from that because I did really enjoy. Part 2, not so much. Part 2, I think, did let it down.
I think they're both as. I don't really think there's a huge difference in the quality in either of them.
Maybe I just think it was a bit slower paced because
Honestly,
because there was a lot of build up in the first one, whereas this one
there
was sort of like
yes.
had it now.
But in episode 2, I think there were some better moments between the characters, especially the Doctor and
the Doctor
Sec.
has some. Yeah, the Doctor does, but I think the whole vibe I preferred in the.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough because the mysteries
one.
and the first one does have a nice mystery build up.
Yeah.
And it pays it because and that's the thing. Doctor Who, when you try and do mysteries, often they're forcing the payoff too quickly, or they have to have it like certain, like you have all the payoff in like a minute, and then you have the resolution for the last 15 minutes. But with this being a 2-parter, I do agree with you. With the first episode, they could really build up this mystery, and then they could really kind of have the payoff be stretched over a good 15 minutes, like the kind of the revelation. And then the next episode, it is
them dealing with it, yeah.
Yes, which is a very different, definitely has a very different feel between the episodes because of that. But I think as a whole, it works much better.
Yeah, I agree. Because most of my notes, I always keep notes. Most of my notes that are negative are generally production things, and there's very little with the plot itself that I thought was like, that's questionable.
The more I think about the plot, the better it is actually.
But it's not even necessarily that it's better or that I'm like going, wow, this is groundbreaking. It's kind of just nice Dalek story. I do think there's a bit more to it because obviously there's your purity evolution debate thing that they do, which is quite interesting. And actually, I've noticed the 3 Dalek episodes that we've done on this podcast all have that kind of theme because Victory of the Daleks is the new Daleks versus the old Daleks. What the hell was it called? The newest one, Revolution of the Daleks.
Either or
was about those human created Daleks, for want of a better word, versus the proper Daleks. So it's kind of quite similar to here, but I do prefer the way
but
this
done much worse. Yeah, because this one's done much better.
This is done actually quite well because you get the Cult of Skaro in there. So any reason you're like, why are these Daleks experimenting? You've actually got some quite distinct Daleks.
That's the point of the Cult of Skaro. And the Cult of Skaro, they've got names. They're very much their own.
Do you know them?
Sec is the leader.
Yes. I think only 2 get a name drop in this one, though.
How can I not remember the last one? He's very important. He's like, I know he's like, Khan. That's it.
Khan, yes.
Because he goes crazy and eventually
I can only think of 3. The other one I know is Thay.
Sec, Thay, Khan.
Well, I cannot think for the life of me what the 4th one is called.
It's got to be a very different name because they're all very different. Sec, Thay, Khan. Bang is what I'm expecting. Something different.
Oh, I've googled it. Yeah, I would never have got that one. It is Jast.
Jast.
Do
you like Jast? No, shut up. Right, it's all the listeners. He played that. When I called him on Teams, he decided to just play that on Spotify for me. Not a bit of it, the full thing before he showed his face.
It was my intro track, yeah.
My
microphone was off, the camera was off. I just played that.
I hate it.
Then as soon as the song ended, my face appeared. That's the kind of wild living we do on this podcast. Yeah. But yeah, going back to that production point. I've plus points, I have neutral points, which are just observations I made, and then there are negative points, and the negative points are all production things. I'm going to get them out of the way now before we delve into the plot. Firstly, as you mentioned, the accents.
Now, come on, Aidan. No, come on. Right. When someone says, hands in the air.
You schmucks.
Is there anything really wrong with that?
Well, it's quite funny. Whenever you watch... Quite often when you watch episodes, let me speak, man. Quite often when we do episodes and we do our live commentaries to each other, a lot of the time your dad will walk in and he'll have a comment here and there. My parents never do that. They've never walked in.
They don't love you. We get that. Yeah.
except for this one. I was watching it. My mum came in and she went, "What the hell are you watching?" Then she was looking at it and I went, "It's Doctor Who." And she was like, "Oh yeah." And then the more she looked at it, she went, oh, is this that one with the really bad accents? And I was like going, yes. And then she said, isn't there like a woman in it? Has that really annoying voice? And then she said, whenever you watched this as kids, she really irritated me. And I thought, okay, this is obviously now I've got older, I can appreciate that as well. And as soon as she started speaking, she was like, Laszlo. And I'm like, what?
Laszlo.
What is genuine New York? And I'm like, what are you doing? What
Now
are
listen,
you doing?
I'm not the greatest at American accents. And I'll quote my drama teacher here. Let's just go with English, shall we? That's what he said to me. I worked hard on it as well. It really hurt. It really hurt. But I had to listen to them loads and loads of times. So I at least know what you should be going for. And hands in the air is not it at all.
No. But even like she was really bad. There were some other people I thought, what are you from the American part of Swansea? What is that supposed to be? But then Andrew Garfield shows up and the man played Spider-Man. So I thought you are going to have a good accent. However, he did not have a New York accent where Spider-Man is from. So he'd had no practice for that. They instead decided to make him from the South. And one of my favorite lines of his was when he went, "My daddy's on the railroad."
Yeah.
And I thought, no, Andrew.
But
no.
the thing is, because everyone's accent is so terrible, there's either got to be a terrible accent coach somewhere on that set, or the director made a creative decision to make. It was not the actors. Well, it was because they couldn't do the accents.
Absolutely was.
But it's
they
also got to be
given good direction. No, you mean
yes.
they
There's
weren't
got to be a
guided.
decision
They weren't
somewhere
guided.
else. Yeah.
They showed
The
up
fact
and
the fact everyone's is so terrible means that no one said anything about it, or they thought it was good.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. All the actors showed up on set and they went, okay, let's just hear your American accent. And they've all gone, "My daddy's on the railroad." And they've gone, yeah, that's fine, and moved with it. And they haven't decided to go, maybe we should work on that. They've
No,
just
but that's got to
go.
be. That's got to be. Or they were all on set and then they had this accent coach come on and they walked in and they were like, "Everyone, today," and it was just like, "Hands in the air," and then they were like, "Hands in the air," and then you've got it. Now we'll run with that. That's what I think happened. I think they had an accent coach come in who completely lied on their application and just
Probably, yeah.
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 I believe that 100%.
It's like whenever you do an American accent, the easiest thing to do is just really
Yeah.
any word that has an R in it.
and make the
but I
letters
noticed
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed there's obviously if there's the word creature. Now, if you said to me, say creature in American accent, I'd probably go creature like that. That just very standard thing. But I noticed when she said creature at one point, Tallulah, 2 hours and an H. No, 3 hours and an H.
How else would you spell Tallulah?
It was actually quite funny because when I was writing a note and I spent about 3 minutes trying to spell Tallulah. I was going, how the hell do you do it? And then she went, 3 hours and an H. And I went, oh, thank you. And then I wrote it down. She answered my question. so that was actually quite useful. That was.
How many out? 3 hours. Thanks.
Yeah. But she says creature at one point, but she kind of goes, creature. And I thought, no, you've put the at the start of the word, not at the end. Yeah. And I thought, questionable. So that was, that was probably the biggest production issue I had.
Like Andrew Garfield's I do think he's a fabulous actor. So there's got to just be someone like the director. Just I don't know. Maybe because he's directing David and
Freema.
Thank you. Maybe he was or whoever the director was. Who was the director?
No idea.
Okay, maybe they were.
I don't know. Let me have a look because a lot of these series sort of have.
Yes, and we can compare
returning
directors.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, they probably maybe because they're working with those two people who you can usually just let act because they play the role for so long. Maybe they just kind of ignored everyone else when it comes to directing wise and didn't give them many pointers other than just go with this accent. Maybe. We're theorizing here, but
this is quite interesting actually because I looked at it. It's a name called James Strong, and I thought I don't know that name. I'm assuming this is the only episode of Doctor Who that he's done, but he actually has done quite a few episodes of Doctor Who, including Voyage of the Damned, Often
Oh.
seen as an amazing episode. The Impossible Planet / the Satan Pit with the Ood, amazing episode. Partners in Crime with the Adipose, amazing episode. Planet of the Dead, not so much, but still quite a familiar one. You know, in the desert with the bus and stuff like that.
Thank you.
So actually, this man has done some quite good episodes of Doctor Who. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe it was while we're here. Actually, I did one of my neutral points was that I thought the Daleks were directed in a really weird way, and I say they were directed because it's got to be the director to make this decision. In that he sort of treated them more like they were human actors. Like there's a bit when Dalek Sec is talking to people, and rather Dalek just we are the Daleks, blah 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 blah. It's Eye Stalk is looking around at all these people. And I thought that was I've never really seen that before. And it's like the Dalek is addressing them. And it's like,
It's a better. I know exactly what you mean, and I think it's a better take on it because he's not humanizing them. He's making them more alive by using how humans often communicate. So he's looking at them and he's being more. I agree with you there. For example, when there's a moment where they all turn around in shock for some reason. I can't remember. But instead of just going, hello, it's like turns around head first, body follows while they're talking, and it's like an actual what's happening here. It's
also the
adds a bit of emotion.
and the
emoting, whatever.
famous or infamous bit where the Daleks are gossiping. And you know when they move in closer and they go, "What are your opinions on Sec?"
When he
and
turns around,
and then he turns around and he's like, "Well," and then that's quite. And again, I wrote, that's him treating them. Maybe it's the Dalek operator, but I'd assume it'd be the same Dalek operator across all this era. Do you know what I mean? Because there can't be many people who know how to do that.
Maybe the writer as well, just maybe adding.
So I feel like the director probably gone, right, you're Daleks, and hello, little man in the Dalek, but I'm going to treat this the Dalek as a human person. So rather than a man standing there and going, "We are the Daleks," blah 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 blah. You've got the Dalek eye stalk moving around, and you've got the Daleks gossiping, and there's even a few times the voice change is more like acted, because obviously Nicholas Briggs has done the Daleks throughout all of New Who. Nobody else even dares do the Daleks because that's his domain. But there was one of the first lines Dalek Sec had in this. I was thinking, oh, Nicholas, are you on an off day or something? Because he was like going, "We are the Daleks," and he was like talking differently, and it wasn't just him doing the "We are the Daleks," his usual shouty, "We are the Daleks, we're gonna kill you, exterminate, exterminate, exterminate." That's how he usually just does the Daleks, you know what I mean? But this one, it was like he was just talking into the voice modulator, and I noticed that throughout the episode. So I thought this is a conscious decision. This isn't just Nicholas showing up going, "How the hell did I do the Dalek voice before?" So I thought it's like the director James Strong has just gone, we've got Daleks, but I'm gonna treat them like they're actors. And I thought that was a very interesting thing to do.
I think it's a good thing to do. I think it'd be nice for all of the Daleks in a sense, because then you can maybe have a bit of individuality. But I think it was at least necessary for these ones, because they're called Tuscaro. They are by definition
the best of the best.
Yes, and they're very different, and they're very individual.
Yes. So before we delve into the plot itself, I feel like this may be a slightly longer episode or a lot to cut out. But
it is a two-parter.
Yes, but we've done a two-parter before on this podcast. We managed to do that in 56 minutes. So
when was it?
End of time.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, my other production issues were, I'm just going to roll through these. Bad green screen. There was a few times.
Yeah.
There's quite a few times somebody was stood and there was clearly supposed to be something behind them, and it was clear they were not behind them.
Any scene where they were on top of the Empire State Building?
That is my next point. When they were on the roof, it was twice. When it was the workers going, "I can't feel my hands," and then when the doctor was...
No, Aidan, right. "I can't feel my hands." You really...
It was when they were on the roof. Then when the doctor was up later on, they were like going, "It's so windy," but not even a strand of hair was moving. David Tennant, I noticed there was a little flicker, but with those two at first, they were just going, "It's so," and then it sort of zoomed out, and I thought, I can tell you're just on a studio floor, and somebody's gone, "We forgot the fans," and they've gone, "Oh, whatever, it doesn't matter," and they've just
"It's windy." Just go with it.
And even when David Tennant's on the front and his hair's flicking a bit, I was thinking, you're on the top of the Empire State Building. Your coat would be bellowing about, but his coat was fine. His suit was untouched. It was just.
His coat.
it was
He would
just
have been
the
better if he'd
hair.
just taken the coat off, because that thing would have gone.
Yeah. So that was a production issue. I thought not windy enough, the Empire State Building. And
Then
my
again,
final.
could they have made it torrential? Because I think he would have died. All right, David. I know you signed a contract here, but just go with it.
They could have put him in a wind tunnel. His face is moving.
You got to
back.
strap him in.
His whole face is like, you know when they do that when your mouth goes all big when you've got the wet
Yeah.
hair, and he's all trying to reach for
David,
the pad.
the line is
that's what they should have done. And my final production issue that I had a major, because obviously you've got production issues because this is 2007, so already I'm like, this doesn't hold up today. But I was trying to ignore a lot of that and just go with things that are timelessly bad. And the final thing was the tentacles on his head for the human Dalek when they were not, they could have just been limp. That might have worked better. Or you could have made them move a bit more organically. But the way they were just moving like, I thought that doesn't work.
I didn't like it.
I've also
They
realized
were wet as
for the
well.
audio version there, it just sounds like I'm doing the David Brent dance there. They can't actually tell what I'm doing with my fingers, but I was moving my fingers very rigidly as if to replicate the poor tentacles on Sex Head.
Sex head.
Yeah, I realized that after I said that. I thought that's my punk album coming soon. So, well, let's just the Dalek plot. The whole idea of the Daleks is that they had to evolve, and they were experimenting on pig people,
Yes.
and they wanted to create a new race of human Daleks until the pure Daleks were like, no. So that is our plot. What are your thoughts on that plot?
I think it's a very interesting idea. The idea that the Daleks are so focused on the idea of being pure that they won't even consider the idea of evolution. It's very interesting. It's very, and it's good that they kind of it's nice to focus on it for a bit, because it's kind of, they say return to flesh, because obviously the Daleks were just things before. But no, how do I feel about the whole Daleks? Yeah, no, because it's interesting, because I do think they should delve more into what Daleks once were, and I think this is a nice episode that kind of delves into that a little bit, not enough, obviously, because I think we should get that later on. But it's nice to see, and it's nice to see how they're so stubborn, the Daleks, and how they're not just creatures of hate; they're creatures of pure. We won't even consider being something else. And it's like, dude, if you'd even consider it, you'd be fine, and the Doctor wouldn't try and stab you every moment he gets.
Yeah, because I thought it was when obviously all the Cortiscar are on board originally. They're like, going, we'll do the final experiment. But then I think it gets to a point when Sek is too human and he becomes too human, doesn't he? That's when they're like, now we've gone too far. Because it's the moment when they're like, I mean, this is in part 2, and even though I wasn't fussed on part 2 as much, but I thought one of the best moments from this whole thing was when Solomon does the big speech, and he's like on about, we can work together, we can, we can be one. And then the Dalek just goes, exterminate, and kills him. And I thought that was such a good moment, because it's just like, that is a Dalek.
It was ruined for me, though, because my dad walked in as he was halfway through his speech, and he said, does he get shot? Looked at me, and I just went, and he was like, I gotcha. So yeah, it was predictable, but it was a good moment to show you how the Daleks would they'll let you talk. They'll be like, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, basically.
They're absolute arseholes.
Yeah, and the Daleks had a few moments like that in that episode, actually. I think that's what, we've had this debate previously, so I'm not going to bother doing it again, but on the Victory of the Daleks episode, we said, should Daleks be scheming or brute force? Do you remember that debate that we had? It was a long time ago, bloody hell. We were in the radio studio. That's how long ago it was. So part 1 of this story is very much the scheming Daleks, and part 2 becomes brute force. And I like the way that they did it in this story, because by the time it's brute force, the Daleks are just like exterminating Sek. They're exterminating all the hybrids, I guess they were calling them. And then even when they finish that, they just melted their brains essentially. And the Doctor says, this is genocide. And I thought this is because the Daleks were originally based on the Nazis, so it was very much like we've been sort of humanizing Sec recently. We're going, maybe he has wisdom, maybe he can be good, and then we go, no, they're Daleks, they're Nazis. You can't, do anything with that. And I thought that
shows you they can be good actually, if they're not Dalek. That's the very interesting thing. If they're not Dalek, they can be good. But if they
Daleks
are Dalek,
fundamentally
they just can't.
Have no redemption. But I do really like. I do like the Daleks in this story, and people criticize them and say, why would they do the human evolution thing? And actually, if I was to go a little bit devil's advocate, I would say when they were temporal shifted into the Empire State Building or New York, wherever they ended up, and they were like, "Ooh," I do think, why did they think, let's hijack this Empire State Building? Or let's build the Empire State Building, as it was implied. It was implied there was a whole Dalek scheme to begin with. Why did they think of that rather than just that with 4 Daleks, we can just kill everybody? We're in 1930s, 1920s America. They don't have tanks. They don't have anything. We can just
because they wanted to create. They wanted to create more Daleks. If they killed that, they needed.
Oh, I suppose so. Because I'm mainly thinking as conquering, but I guess
these aren't the conquering Daleks. They've never been that. These ones are the Cult of Skull. The whole point is they're supposed to think outside the box and do.
I suppose so. Then, yeah. If it was 4 standard Daleks and they landed in,
they'd go 8.
Yeah, they'd be exterminating left, right, and center. Then I guess that makes sense. Yeah. So you have
quickly Dalek Thrush. Come here. I'm going to mount this Gatling gun to you.
Yeah, exactly. I also there was quite a bit. Do you know with the just thinking about that when the Daleks started attacking the Whoville camp and it was choo choo choo. My brain, because I've edited this podcast so much, was going, oh, they're swearing a lot, aren't they? Because obviously our sense that is a Dalek exterminating. Yeah. So yes, so the Daleks I thought were fine, and people criticize them as saying why would they do this? It's not very Dalek-like, but I do think it makes sense for the cult of Skaro. And I do think it is entertaining. I've also seen a criticism. I've also seen a criticism that said, "Why have we never seen them try to evolve since?" And I think, well, we saw how it went the first time. Why would they bother again? Because the Daleks, when they are just like, "No, we've had enough," and they go, "Right, the Doctor, you're an enemy," and then the point they even point, like you said, he's on that control panel, and his gun just moves to the Doctor, and he's like, "Right, I've had enough of this," and then the whole body moves, and it is just because they're going, no more evolving. This is stupid. Yeah,
no, but it's
for people who say the Daleks should have handled that since. I'm like, no.
I mean, they did. They tried it, and they came to the conclusion, no. Like it's not like they came to the conclusion of okay, but we'll do something.
Yeah, I suppose so. Because if you think about it, we've had them not necessarily evolve in the human sense again, but we have had the paradigm Daleks in the Matt Smith era. Yeah. They're
fine with evolving as Daleks, but this path of evolving down the route of being different in any sense other than just pure Dalek, they've gone, it's not for us.
Because then you could say that we've had that again since in the Jodie Whittaker episode, as much as we despise that episode. But there are the human-built Daleks, and then I go, no, we don't do this anymore. You're Dalek or you're nothing, and then they come in and kill them all. But I do quite like how the Doctor is sort of. I thought the Doctor's really strong in this episode.
Oh, well, that's just David Tennant.
Because it's David Tennant, yes, of course.
Well, that's the thing my dad said about David Tennant in this episode when he was doing the speech just after the dude gets exterminated.
Yes.
My dad said, even when it's a naff script, he said that, even when it's a naff script or it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, David Tennant never does it like that. He always puts 100% effort in. And I think that's encompasses everything about David Tennant's performances in Doctor Who. Even when he's playing, was it Cassandra, the big plastic skin lady?
Yes.
Even when he's doing that, he's still putting 100% effort in. No matter what he's doing in Doctor Who, he's always 100% effort. And I think that really comes across in episodes where maybe they're a bit subpar because he's always there. It's like with Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, I agree. But the thing, we'll come on to the Doctor properly shortly because I do have a lot of points about the Doctor actually, and Martha actually. Martha really impressed me in this episode. But there was a point where the Doctor, when Sek is talking to the Doctor about how they must evolve and change, and the Doctor just goes, "What?"
Yeah,
And I really like that, because I thought that is basically the audience's reaction to this. Is when they're going, "We must evolve and change," and we go, "You what?" And I loved the way the Doctor did that. I don't know if he did say "come again." I don't think he would have, but something to that sense. And it was like, "Wait, what are you talking about? This isn't." And it was like the
he
Doctor
said something
was
like
trying.
you want to, like just said what they said back to him basically. And it's incredible because the Doctor knows the Daleks inside and out. Like he knows what they think and how they act, to the point where he is just blinders. He will not consider any other option. It is they are this, nothing else. Which is obviously, it's been proven time and again that sometimes doesn't always go well. But in this, it's
That looked like you having a really profound experience there.
Oh
I'm not.
God
I
damn it,
really.
my brain.
I really
Come
hope
on.
people watch the YouTube video just for that moment where
It's
it
incredibly
looked
annoying.
like it looked like Buddha entered your soul. Then I thought that's what just
I
happened.
don't know what happened. I've lost my line. This is really annoying. Right. Yes. Okay. So for Dalek Sec to say an option that is completely irrelevant for a Dalek to say that he doesn't consider a Dalek would ever say it's such a good moment, because the Doctor, he wouldn't he can't respond to that, because it's like it's completely it's an impossible event for a Dalek to say, why don't we evolve? He's just like, you are. Are you on something right now, Mr. Dalek Sec? Because and I think that's a good moment. There was a point there, but my brain decided to literally die halfway through that. So to you, Aidan.
So I would just roll with that. So I'm going to go with the Doctor now. Well, I'm not
Yes.
going to go with the Doctor. Where am I going?
I'd love
But
to
I
go with
thought the reboot.
his turn.
I do really like, again, the Doctor reacting to the Daleks has got to be one of the best moments for any Doctor. And obviously, the Davidson has already faced the Daleks already. But I thought what was really nice about the way he faced the Daleks here is that when he's experimenting on that brain, which again, I'm not really sure how that brain ended up in that tunnel, but let's just roll with it.
Well, it was a Dalek embryo. It wasn't a brain.
Oh, I thought it was a brain. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's Dalek embryo. It's the dregs, and they literally just dump them.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for clearing up all my confusions with this episode. Why did they do that? Did you just explain it to me? Okay. So when he finds that thing, and he's just sort of basically he's serious that he knows there's a threat and he's got to handle that, but he's quite casual with it. And when he's just sort of like, I'm just going to go experiment on this thing, he's just sort of like a bit like, oh, there's an alien threat. I'm sure I'll work it out.
Yeah.
When he goes, 8, 9, 7, that's got to be, which I really like, because that was a really nice sciencey side of the Doctor. You don't really see that very often, but I really liked that just really small line. But then when he worked out Skaro, the first thing he doesn't sit there and go, oh no, it's the Daleks. He immediately leaps up and demands, where's Martha? That's the first thing he does. And the moment he switches, just like that, from, ooh, what's this threat going to be, to, okay, this is serious. That was such a good flip.
It's subtle as well.
Yeah.
Because often when a Doctor gets their big Dalek moment, like with Christopher Eccleston screaming at a Dalek, Matt Smith screaming at a Dalek, all that kind of stuff, they all have their nice moment. Obviously, Matt is louder because he's but it's always a big, it's very big moment, and it's them always directly opposing the Dalek. But in this case, it's subtle, because it's him, it's all of that, everything, the hate, the pain Daleks can cause, all that in his head, in that one line, and the reaction. And it's incredibly well done, actually, because you can see all that. If you know the Doctor, you can see how they're a threat, and you see all those extra things. But even if you don't know the Doctor's character, you can see this is important, at the very least.
Yeah. And again, it comes a moment shortly after is when they're in the tunnel when he's with Tallulah, and they see 3 L's and an H, and they see that Dalek go past, and she's just sort of like, "Ah, it's a metal thing," and whatever. But then his face, and she's like, "Oh, you're not kidding." When she looks at him and can see, every time I do her voice, I'm going to do a worse American accent than she manages to do, just because it's so bad. My mum actually
You're
said,
not kidding.
my mum actually said to me, we should have done this whole podcast in awful American accents. And I
Well,
said,
we've still
"No."
got time. We've still got time, okay? So,
So
hands up, asshole.
when that bit when the doctor is in the tunnel and he's with Tallulah and he keeps saying these things, it sounds quite ridiculous, but when she looks at him, his face is just like, "Oh, you're not kidding." But when he says, "I keep defeating them and they survive every single time while I lose," and we've had that line quite a lot in Doctor Who, really. But when he says that time, this is the first time he's seen the Daleks since Rose died or got trapped in the parallel universe. So that is very raw for this Doctor.
Yes.
And I think
And
that's a great way to even address that and be like, it's not just like the Daleks are back. It's like the Daleks are back and the Doctor is not happy about that. Do you know what I mean?
And
I really like the way they did that.
it encompasses the idea of we said this before. I can't remember which Doctor and when, but even if one Dalek survives, they can cause so much pain, something like that. You know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. And I love that idea that he just it's instead of showing his anger there, it's just showing the pain and fear, I think, as well, mixed into the emotions there, because it's like, and exhaustion as well. He will keep trying and he's never going to give up, but he's just sick to death of having to keep trying.
Yeah.
It's like, can you just die already? It's a fantastic, because usually the Doctor, and the best thing about the Doctor, he's got compassion for every single creature apart from Daleks.
But he still does in this story.
Exactly.
And I really liked that was about to be my next point, actually, because he starts this with going, "It's the Daleks. This is," even if he's angry with it. But by the end of the episode, and Khan is supposedly the last Dalek to survive. Though I do sort of think whenever they say things like that, because Daleks can time travel, surely there's other Daleks that exist at all points in time. Do you know what I mean?
If you can time travel, there's probably like some sort of paradox theory. If you can time travel, do you not exist at all points in time constantly? In that sense.
So I think that I do think that, and I also think, because we've seen there's been so many different Dalek designs over the years.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's the production team going, "What can we do to update these?" But you've also got to imagine in Doctor Who lore, they're just different armies of Daleks.
Yes.
They all do different things. Like the Bronze Daleks, these ones are supposed to be the Time War Daleks. Why they're still kicking around, I don't know. And we haven't had a redesign
Well,
or whatever.
because they tried the redesign once and didn't actually stick to their guns and then
Yeah,
backtracked.
and they should have done. But anyway, so I do sort of think when they go, "We are the last Daleks," I think, but is there not like a one of the blue and silver Daleks over there somewhere? Is there not a white and gold one somewhere? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's
But at
besides.
the time of writing, they
Yeah,
wouldn't even
that's-
consider that to be an option. So
No,
yeah.
that's besides the point. But when all the human Daleks are killed, when the other members of the Cortescara are killed, and the Doctor realizes, okay, Khan is the last Dalek,
Mhm.
he's not necessarily compassionate for the Daleks there, but he's compassionate for the last member of a species.
Because
And he knows I'm the last member of this. Well, even though he wasn't, but he believed he was at this point. He, even though, like, because he knows what it's like to be the last member of a species, he's like, I wouldn't even. It's literally, I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? It's literally that phrase brought to life, that even his Daleks are his worst enemies, but even he thinks, even you are better than being the last of your species.
And I think also he's got that compassion for that last Dalek because of what he saw in Dalek Sec. Because
Maybe,
he
yeah.
saw there is maybe a chance. Because if one Dalek can be turned into something good, then maybe there's a chance that this Dalek can be as well.
Mm.
So I think that also maybe plays a factor. Because maybe if he never saw that, maybe he would kill the last Dalek. But after he's seen that they can show compassion, and because later on in the episode it comes to the point where he's defending Dalek Sec, not physically because he can't get on the stage because he's not fast enough, but with his words. He's like, he's angry at them killing their own kind. But I think he's less angry at them killing their own kind and more angry at them killing their only, and he says it, their only hope of living, in a sense.
Yeah.
Because that is the only way I think the Doctor would have let them live. But obviously, when it becomes the last one, he's like, whoopsie daisies.
Yeah, and even when Khan does just again reject his plea for help, and he
Which
just
I
goes,
love shows Khan's like cowardice there. And he doesn't say anything else other than just, I'm out of here.
emergency temporal shift,
Yeah.
and then leaves. But then even the Doctor's reaction to that isn't like flicking switches and going, must bring it back. He just sort of goes, oh, because he
Shucks.
knows he's going to face the Daleks again. Do you know what I mean? Like I think the Doctor, even though he could literally defeat them, but he'll go, I think these are going to show up again. Like there's even a comic. I didn't actually read the rest of the run, but the Time Lord Victorious event that
That's
they
Aidan
did.
for you. He'll read one comic page and I'll never read the rest.
Well, it was, the big poster I had in my room at uni where the Doctor has that thing. There's the 8th Doctor next to him and the 9th Doctor. It was supposed to be this big multi-platform event, but he just got to a point where they kept adding stuff to it. And I think this is too expensive to keep up with now, so I just gave up basically. But then I think the first comic of that starts with the Doctor, the 10th Doctor, opening the TARDIS door, and there's a bunch of Daleks there, and he goes, I've just dealt with you guys, and it's just like he's just so casual with it. He's just like, oh, you again. And I just think that's got to be how he feels at this point.
Yeah.
Because every Doctor, besides the 8th Doctor, on screen has dealt with the Daleks, and it's got to just be like, ugh. Like obviously in extended material, all of them have, but we've never seen the 8th Doctor do it. But every time you defeat them, you've got to know that they've got to show up again.
And I think it's good. The Daleks are a fantastic character, and I think these are good 2 episodes to delve into those characters more, rather than just them being the template for bad people. They're a nice. I really think this episode is important in giving us a slightly different take on the Dalek.
Yeah,
I
because
think
it was like just hold on, just even you're saying like they're not just a template for the bad people. This episode still reminds us, like I said, where the Daleks have come from, and saying they are an allegory. I can actually never say it. An allegory. There we are. That's it. For the Nazis, that is what they originated as. But over the years, they have evolved into far much more than that. What are you doing with your camera?
Oh, I had to lift up my whole laptop.
Come on, go down a bit. Let's see more. Let's get less headspace in.
Better?
Yeah. Okay. So say your point.
It's an important episode for the Daleks, this, because it gives us a slightly different take on them, other than just because they are probably the best creatures in Doctor Who, enemy-wise. It's the same as saying.
Surely the Cybermen take that.
But they're the most well known. Am I wrong in saying that? Which
Oh,
are
the
more well
most
known.
well-known, yeah, sure.
So then they are probably the best when it comes to most people's view. It's like the Joker. It's that idea. Most famous. A lot of people like them. So they use them a lot. And I think this is why this episode I think is better than. Not better. I think it's a good take on the Daleks because it does it in a different way rather than just the same old. We need to use the Daleks to get views, and I think maybe people react badly to this episode because it's different. They're like,
Maybe,
"Oh,
yeah.
don't do this with the Daleks because they're supposed to be this," and it's like, but if we just do that, it's gonna get real boring. That's the thing with the Joker. For years, they just did the same thing for the Joker, and it's like, can you stop? And in the Arkham games, first game came out. Batman versus the Joker. Second one came out. Batman versus the Joker. The third one, speculation. Oh, it's Black Mask. Okay, we can have Joker not in this game. He could be like it's main bad guy's the Joker. Fourth game, Joker's dead. Okay, no more Joker. He hallucinates the Joker for most of the game. It's the idea of you don't need to keep reusing the same characters just because they're famous. Just do something different. Or if you're going to do the same characters, do something different like they did with this episode. And I think it's good because it can expand the character and then you can do them again if you really want. But it's rather than just the same thing.
Because obviously this series, the first series, obviously in the Russell Davies run, did 4 series.
Yes.
Who's the villain of the series finale in the first series? Daleks. Daleks. Who's the villain in the series finale of the second series?
Angels.
Daleks.
Okay.
Who's the villain in the finale of the 4th series?
Adipose. I got this.
Daleks.
Okay.
The one series. Here we are. I picked an interesting finger here for this.
The
one series where the Daleks are not the villain in the series finale is this one. Obviously, the Master is the.
God, I was close.
Obviously, the Master is the villain in this series finale.
Yes.
So they have, like I said before, they have to use Daleks in the series. They have to. They have no choice. So they've gone, right, what are we going to do with the Daleks here? Do we do something wildly different? Do we experiment with something? Or do we just churn out Daleks again? And I think it's a very much damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because if this was just a standard, we are Daleks, we're evil, we're going to take over, the people would have gone, oh, it's boring. Can you not do something different? Then they do something different. They go, can you not just do what the Daleks are supposed to be? You know what I mean? It's like...
You are correct. Because if people... I am of the mind of, if I ask for something different and you give it to me, and even if I don't like it, I've got to respect the fact you did something different. But a lot of people are very much like, I want something new, refreshing. What the fuck have you done? This is too new and refreshing. It's like, you asked for it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, like you can understand, you can disagree with what they did, but you can't pressure a creative force into doing something and then be surprised it's different. Like it's,
yeah.
you know.
And I just think as with the Daleks as well. Actually, interestingly, before we did this podcast, I think it was yesterday, a list came up on my phone. You know, I get like recommended articles when I go on Google. Sometimes they're just like, Sharon Osbourne explodes on TV show. I'm like going, not explodes physically. I mean, she gets angry.
Oh, okay.
But I'm like,
I was like, well, that's very different.
But I would look at that and I go, I don't really care. But the next one down was like every Dalek episode ever ranked. So I thought that'd be quite interesting to see what there is. Now I disagreed with quite a big chunk of that article actually, because I was like, really, that one there? But this one was third worst of them all. All of them from William Hartnell to Jodie Whittaker. This was the third worst one.
That sounds like a hive mind mentality.
And yeah, because I thought, and the explanation in it kind of annoyed me actually, because it wasn't giving the writer Helen Rayner, it wasn't really giving her a chance, because it sort of said it was a weak script to begin with, and Russell T Davies wasn't able to come in and do his rewrites because he was ill. Because he does. I've read his book, The Writer's Tale, and a lot of those he talks about the fires of Pompeii, for example, and he rewrote so much of that because he basically got the script and was like, okay, not sure about that. I then redid it, and the idea was that with this episode he was ill, so he didn't have the chance to do it. So he just went, yeah, sure, just make it, whatever. But why do we need his hand on it? Do you know what I mean? Do we not just trust Helen Rayner to write a good episode?
It's always important to have someone who knows what they're doing on set, or when it comes to the creative process, I mean, because then they can guide people. But having his hands on everything can often restrict a lot of stuff. It's like with George Lucas, if he's got his hands in everything, if he's got his grip on everything, that's a problem. If he's there to guide people, that's key. So I think there's a limit. There's kind of a middle ground.
There's that, but it's also the idea that the explanation for why this was third was because Russell T Davies didn't write it. It was like,
it sounds spiteful. It sounds like I don't want to write this, so I'm going to find a reason. I don't want to like this, so I'm going to find a reason why I don't like this.
Yeah, it felt like
so therefore, yeah.
It's almost as if they haven't, rewatched any of. To make a list like that, I recommend you watch all the Dalek episodes together. You start with them all and you just watch them all.
And you write notes after every single one of them, so it's fresh.
Yeah, it felt like they'd just gone, oh, isn't that one that people don't really like? Yeah, sure, I'll just put that third worst.
Hive mind mentality. I think with this episode, reasoning why people don't like this one, because
other people don't.
well, just if you don't like this episode, if I believe it's probably for these reasons. One, because you disagree with the take on the Daleks.
Yep.
2, you've heard someone else say it's a bad episode. Therefore, you've just jumped on the bandwagon. Or let's think of a third one. Because
the accents.
Yes. Or because it just seems like the reasoning for disliking this episode is often more just people saying, is that the bad one? Is that the one? Yeah. I remember that. It's got where he becomes a human, and I'm like, okay, him becoming human looks it looks there, and on paper it sounds terrible. But if you think of it in the story of the Daleks and why they're doing it and how it kind of humanizes them, and it shows you a real side of how stubborn and ignorant and just dense the Daleks are, it's a fantastic deep dive into their mentality. Yeah, and it really shows you and they've got people who say, I disagree with how, like, if someone says to me, I disagree with how the Daleks are portrayed in this episode, I can solve that problem quite easily by saying they're the cult of Skara. They're a subsection. It's just how it is.
I'd also think of this as a potential reason why some people don't like it is say you get to the end of the David Tennant era, and you have to well, the Russell Davies era rather, and you said rank all the Dalek episodes. So you've got Dalek, and then the two-parter with Chris Ferguson, then you've got Doomsday, then you got this one, then you've got the Stolen Earth. This absolutely would rate last in that. I would,
Yeah, of course.
and it's almost as if that mentality has continued all the way through Matt Smith era, Peter Capaldi era, and Jodie Whittaker era, where we've had far worse Dalek episodes come since. But because this one was ranked bottom then,
Yes.
you just tend to think of it as, oh yeah, you can't really get much worse than that. But it's like, Asylum of the Daleks, maybe.
If I were to compare
Revolution.
which would you think's worse, Aidan? I want your honest opinion on this. Victory of the Daleks, not worse, but which one do you think's better? We'll say Victory of the Daleks or these two parts. Which one do you think's better?
Well, I'm actually going to rank. I'm going to include a third in that. I'm actually going to rank all 3 Dalek stories that we've done on this podcast.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to say that my least favorite of the ones that we've done, Revolution of the Daleks.
Well, that's over there.
That's a given. Second, Victory of the Daleks, and first would be this one. Of all the ones we've done.
100% agree with you. Yeah.
Of all the ones we've done, that's how I would rank this episode. Because and then perhaps if I was rating all new Who Dalek stories, it would be Revolution of the Daleks last. Then it would be Resolution.
Yeah.
Then it would be Asylum of the Daleks, I think. And then perhaps Victory. And then maybe this one.
Yes.
And then all the others after that. So it wouldn't be bottom, but it wouldn't be top. It'd be somewhere in the middle.
It's not as bad as people want it to be. It's
No.
It's nowhere near as good as the best Dalek episodes, but it's not terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like
I mean, so like some moments I thought were quite endearing. I just thought, because I'm just thinking, there's some notes here I've not spoke about, so I'll just give them a mention, even if we don't go into a big topic, just before we then go on to what we do to fix it, really, which I imagine is not going to be a very long section.
No.
But I've said this earlier, the Doctor and Martha, I thought I've said this before, I know Martha is one of your favourite companions. She's not one of my favourites, but I don't dislike her. I do really like her, but I think there are people that are better. That's basically how I feel. But here, I felt quite impressed with her because her and I remember the last time I did a rewatch of this series, I remember getting to the end of it and thinking, the Doctor really wasn't very nice to Martha this series. I remember thinking she really got quite shafted by him, really. But in this episode, I thought
she did. That's the problem.
Yeah, but the chemistry was actually a lot better than I seem to remember it being in this episode. Like I think there were a few moments, the bit where the Doctor's going, oh, the Empire State Building's not quite built yet. It's got to be about. Then she goes, November 30th, 1930, or whatever it is. And he goes, oh, you're getting good at this. I really like that line. There's the bit when the pigs are approaching them in the tunnels, and Martha goes, they're following you. And the Doctor goes, yeah, I kind of noticed that. I thought I really liked that bit. And then there's another bit, but I've forgotten what that bit was now. But anyway, I really liked that here. So that was quite nice. The Hooverville idea that there are all these people banding together.
Well, that's true. That's
but the way that they put that into this episode and focused it on that.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, I liked that. And then even as much as I found her annoying, that bit when she sees Laszlo when Tallulah sees Laszlo in the tunnel again. I thought that was hey.
How many L's? So 2 or
3 L's and an H.
Gotcha.
I've actually spelt it wrong here, but anyway. When she sees Laszlo in that tunnel again, and she's not like, what are you? And runs away. She's still like, this is the love of my life. And even though he is hideous now, she's still like adjusting his collar and being really nice to him. I was also thinking for the actor, that's got to be really uncomfortable having those teeth in your mouth.
Yeah, I know. The teeth, because they'll pull your jaw forward because you wouldn't be able to go back. That's. Yeah, I could have just got rid of the teeth.
Yeah, anybody in prosthetics didn't have a good time with this episode, really, did they? So that was really nice. Also a bit that got me quite emotional was when there were 2 moments, both for the Doctor here. And the first one was, as you said, when he does that speech after Solomon has been killed.
He just puts so much soul into that. I love it.
The Doctor at that point is just like, just kill me. Like, because I need to save these people, and my number one thing is to sacrifice myself. And I thought that was such a good moment because that's just the Doctor sort of like at wit's end, just like, just kill me. but he's just
The
thinking.
Doctor, one thing I love about the Doctor so much is he'll never sacrifice someone else on their behalf. Like if someone sacrifices himself, he'll respect that, but he will never sacrifice someone on their behalf because he will always sacrifice himself, and it's such a noble
Except
mentality.
in the Jodie Whittaker era, but let's
We
not.
ignore that. Yeah, right.
Let's not talk about that. And then the final bit that got me a bit like, oh, this is nice, isn't it? Was at the end where Laszlo is about to die, and he goes, "Nobody else is
Yes.
dying on my watch today," and he just gets out of Bunsen burner and does who knows what he does, but it doesn't matter. He makes sure Laszlo has at least an
He turns on
extended
a Bunsen
period of
burner
life.
with a sonic screwdriver, which wouldn't make sense because it's a purely mechanical thing. Like it's manual. Bunsen burners are not automatic.
No, yeah, true.
But
yeah, I just
it's nice that because it's the idea which Batman has as well. You can't save everyone, but try. But just try, and I love that. And the Doctor has that. Like he couldn't save everyone, but he's not going to give up. Like if you can't save everyone, don't then accept everyone's death. Just accept you couldn't save those people and save the rest. I don't understand if there are people out there saying, if we hadn't had this episode, if people out there were saying, why have the Daleks never tried to evolve? Then that's fair enough. But now that we've seen it, the argument of why don't they try, you just direct them to this episode. It's like, they have. It didn't go well. Or it did go well, but they chose not to go along with it because they don't see it as a
and
Dalek
it's
thing.
also it's a contained story as well. It's not like ones that we've talked about before where it's like they set up this idea maybe to deal with it one day. They literally set up the idea and then went, no, this is stupid, and then moved on from it. It's not like they went, what would happen if Daleks evolve? Anyway, let's escape now and just leave that dangling. They literally set it up and went, no, we're never going to do this again. This
If
hasn't
Daleks
worked.
evolved, this would happen, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah,
But
and it's
Daleks
also
don't want this
it's
to
one of
happen.
the it's also a story where it's well worth a two-parter. So you could not do this in a single parter. This
No.
deserves a two-parter.
We've explained why, because the build-up is important.
Mm.
And yes.
So, what would you do to fix this? I imagine this is only going to be about 2 minutes long, this section, but what would you do to fix it? Is there anything you'd do to fix this?
No.
Besides, because a lot of my points, really, I'm just thinking production issues, and we try to ignore them a lot on this podcast because it's sort of that's not what we're here for. We're not here to say sack that director.
We'll say why, if there's something that's gone terribly wrong, we'll say why we think that is, which is often the writer or director or production reasons. We'll never say a production reason is we'll never say the production is bad, but we will use the production as an explanation for something happening in the show.
Yes, exactly. We will say this is why people don't like it, because I can imagine this puts you off. But we're here just to talk about plot. So if I was saying what would I do to fix this, I'd say hire American actors or a decent vocal coach.
Yes, because then the characters would then have American accents. That's what we mean. We use the production for the fiction. But
actual
I'd
plot,
try and put more money in, because then you can get just if a broad thing. It just feels like this episode needed more money in it.
I don't even know if that was an issue. I thought, besides from the obvious, this is 2007 on a BBC budget kind of things, like the studio is really windy, and then also, sort of the kind of naff CGI when the guy gets sucked into Dalek Sec.
Yeah,
I generally didn't have that many issues with it, money wise, because there was a lot. I mean, maybe it could have benefited from actually going to New York rather than just making do with Cardiff, because
when they were outside the Empire, not the Empire State, the Statue of Liberty, I was like, that's not the Statue of Liberty.
No,
where you're standing.
No, and it's not. But it's like, if you look at this episode, it's set in New York, and then you've got the Matt Smith episode, The Angels Take Manhattan, which was filmed in New York. One feels like it is, and one feels like it isn't.
Yes.
So that maybe that's my only monetary thing I could say is that. But I don't know, plot wise, I don't know if there is much I would change, because
I think it does what it set out to
its
do,
job. Yeah.
And it's done okay. And I think the only way for this to be better is if it were a completely different story, or just like a complete different setting. Like, for it to be better, it just has to be something different, because it does what it set out to do fine.
Yeah, because I can imagine some people could say, well, I would fix this by maybe you can keep it in New York, but get rid of the evolution element, or maybe keep the evolution element but get rid of the New York. But somehow it all works. Like, you know, you could just get rid of the New York element. Where would you set it? I think that's quite an irrelevant. I think that's quite an irrelevant detail, really. I don't really know if that is something that is a minus point, because the Hooverville thing works and everything. I like it. I do.
If you
like
set it in a
I
different
do like this
location,
episode.
yeah, if you set it in a different location, how do you replace the Hooverville element? What building do you use instead of the Empire State Building? It all kind of has to be how it is for it to work. And I think this episode does work in what it wants to be. It's not amazing, but it's not as people need to kind of get over yourselves with this episode. Watch it again and critically
on its own as well. Don't watch it in a rewatch. Just watch this episode.
And if you disagree with us, then that's fair enough. But please reason it. Don't just disagree with us because make sure it's, you know what I mean? Look at it and say, I disagree with you because I think that Daleks evolving is bad for this reason. Like, that's what we need here, you know?
But then but again, even the Daleks agree with you. So it's like, is that a valid criticism? I'm saying if you think that Dalek evolution is stupid, well, it's like, well, yes, so did the Daleks. So it's like,
yeah, it's in the episode.
There isn't really.
The conclusion
I don't think that's
episode,
a valid. I don't think that's a valid criticism.
Yeah, because even in this episode, even if you think the evolution is dumb and terrible and it shouldn't be done, the Daleks go like, yeah, that's why we killed everyone.
Yeah,
that's the point of the story. So there you go.
It's not a 10 out of 10 episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not trying to be. And I think that's the point, really. This isn't trying to be Journey's End or The Stolen Earth. I feel like this is just a Dalek story.
With any episodes where we say, where we kind of say it's better than what people say it is, I think it's always because it does what it's meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't fault something you can fault it and say it's comparing it to other thing. But if you compare it to itself, then it just does what it's meant to do.
So, but I do think we can say, alongside Victory of the Daleks, Sleep No More, The Witchfinders, and The Doctor's Daughter.
I know, but Witchfinder's a little bit higher because of the potential I think it could do.
Yeah, but I'm about to say is...
Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah.
I say, of all the episodes that we've discussed, alongside those ones, this one does deserve a second chance. That is the very nature of this podcast. What episodes deserve a second chance, and I do think this is one of them.
I agree with you.
And I think that is a nice way to end it.
Yeah. What are we doing next time then?
Next time is a very interesting episode. We can announce this now. Next time
to two people who are listening.
To all 3 people. I say 3. I've got a bit more hope.
Yeah, four? You got to be who's the secret admirer?
Yes. It's because I think I only know of about 3 people that actually listen. But anyway, actually, no, now I think about it, I can only think of 2 people. Anyway, whatever. The point is, next week we have got a very interesting episode. Theoretically, this is the final lockdown virtual episode we should do for this series.
Yep.
As next week, we will be back in the radio studio. However, that is not our big announcement. Our big announcement is that we are going to be crossing over with another Doctor Who podcast called the Hit or Miss podcast. And together, we are going to be exploring Let's Kill Hitler. Strange sentence, really, that is, isn't it? But that is the episode we're going to be doing next week. Does Let's Kill Hitler deserve a second chance? Featuring Hit or Miss, the Doctor Who podcast.
Yes.
So until then, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Or watching. Well, if you're watching, you're also listening. We've gone over this before.
Yes.
But yeah, no, thank you.
And goodbye. I was about to say and goodbye, then you said thank you. So now I'm turning around to thank you and goodbye.
Oh, I see. Well, goodbye and thank you.
Yes.
No, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Stop.